Have you ever observed how certain individuals seem to command the energy of a room without uttering a single word? They don't raise their voices, they don't plead, they simply withdraw, and in that instant, everything shifts. The atmosphere changes. People begin to question, to pursue, to feel. Now imagine if you did the same. If you stopped reacting on impulse, if you chose silence over immediacy, retreat over confrontation, what do you think would unfold? That's where the power lies, when you are no longer constantly accessible emotionally, physically. But the moment you choose to step back, the rules of the game change. And those who thought they understood you realize they never truly did. Napoleon Hill once said, "Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit." Now reflect on this. When you become less reachable, who grows anxious? Who becomes irritated? Who tries to provoke you just to stir a response? This reveals more about them than it does about you. It also reveals the extent to which you're still being controlled without noticing. You continue giving, trying to keep the peace, holding on to people who were never really present in the first place. And with every forced agreement, every immediate reply, every emotional outburst, you surrender fragments of your energy. So what remains at day's end? Exhaustion, disappointment, a hollowness you can't quite explain. But let me tell you why. Because you've been too accessible to those who don't even deserve a second of your silence. This message isn't about turning your back on the world. It's about choosing yourself. It's about stepping into what Hill might describe as personal power, the process of becoming whole, real, and aligned. That journey begins when you realize silence can carry more strength than 1,000 arguments. That withdrawal, when chosen from awareness and not avoidance, is an act of mastery. So I ask you, sincerely, how much longer will you let the emotions of others steer your life? How much longer will you dance like a marionette whenever someone touches a raw nerve? Maybe it's time to sever those strings, to step back, to become an enigma. Because the moment you stop being constantly available, everything changes. You were raised to always show up, to respond instantly, to please, to say yes even when your soul cried no. Since childhood, you've been conditioned to equate your worth with your availability to others. But here's a truth rarely spoken aloud. This kind of availability isn't a virtue, it's a trap. And as long as you believe you must always be emotionally present, you'll be exploited, depleted, and forgotten the moment you're no longer convenient. Do you know why? Because predictability invites utility. When people can predict you, they can use you. You become the go-to emotional fix. They reach for you when they need validation, comfort, or attention, then place you back on the shelf. And you don't even notice because you're lost in the illusion that being there for everyone will eventually make someone truly there for you. But life doesn't work that way. Napoleon Hill spoke of the drifting soul, those who conform to the world without intention. That persona we wear to be accepted, loved, validated. It's that very mask that keeps you endlessly available. You say you're fine while you're suffocating. You reply to every message even when your spirit is weary. You defend, explain, and justify yourself as though the world is owed an answer. But here's the reality. The more you prioritize others' stages, the more you disappear from your own. Constant availability is a subtle form of self-rejection. It's a hidden way of begging for love, dodging rejection, and controlling how you are perceived. That hitherto unknown, the Zen teacher, and the cost is your peace. It's your life force, handed out like it's limitless. But it's not. It's finite. And those who expect you to be perpetually available, they don't want you. They want your emotional labor, validation, distraction, comfort, But the moment you shift, when you draw a line, when you no longer respond on cue, those same people become angry, accusing, confused. It's not that you've changed. It's that you've stopped serving their needs. And here's the cruel irony. The more available you are, the less you're valued. What's too accessible becomes disposable. No one respects what they don't have to earn. No one cherishes what's always within reach. To pause and ask yourself, who is truly worthy of your time, your attention, your presence, or perhaps more importantly, your absence? But before you answer, we must examine something fundamental. Why do we react so much? Why do we give in so quickly? What drives this instinct to explain, to please, to defend? The answer lies in what Napoleon Hill referred to as energy management, the economy of your mind and soul. And that's where we're headed in the next part, because your energy is all you've got. And if you don't learn to protect it, someone else will exploit it. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you for your support. Napoleon Hill did not view the human mind as a mechanical device reacting blindly to every trigger. To him, the mind was an engine of energy, and every thought, feeling, and deed drains or directs that energy. So the real question is, are you consciously directing your energy, or is the world doing it for you? Every time you respond on impulse, you leak psychic fuel. When you defend against criticism that deserves no reply, when you respond to provocations just to win, when you argue pointlessly or chase the approval of those who don't see your worth, you are expending your internal reserves on barren ground. And Hill was clear. What you resist not only persists, it expands. The more you react, the deeper you entangle yourself. Those who feel emotionally worn out aren't weak. They're misaligned. And when someone lives perpetually drained, they become vulnerable. And in vulnerability, they become easy targets. Manipulators, opportunists, and emotional leeches pick up on this quickly. They sense when you lack boundaries, when you react to everything, when you're on a constant mission to fix the world, and they exploit it. Hill said a disciplined mind knows how to conserve energy. That means learning to say no without guilt, to be silent without shame, to observe before acting. Because true strength lies not in your reaction, but in your power to choose when and how to act. But that only becomes possible when you know yourself well enough to recognize your own patterns. How often have you lost sleep over a conversation left unfinished? How often have you replayed what you should have said or puzzled over someone's cruelty? That's energy draining into a void. You are keeping alive ghosts that should have been buried long ago. Feeding dramas. Psychic energy operates like a force field. When it is well defended, it radiates presence. You walk into a room and instantly command respect without uttering a single word. But when mismanaged, you become unseen, reactive, fragile, and the world has little compassion for those who surrender too easily. That's why you must begin observing your own emotional triggers. What compels you to react impulsively? What pulls you out of alignment? These exact points are where your energy leaks, and that is where your real work begins. Not to become detached or cold, but to grow discerning, to become sovereign over yourself. And here lies one of Napoleon Hill's most powerful insights. When you preserve your energy, you dismantle the projections others cast upon you. This unsettles people, because now you're entering the hidden terrain of silent manipulation. In the next section, we'll dive into how opportunists feed off your energy and why your absence shatters their game entirely. Prepare to see into the eyes of those who've silently drained you without your awareness. You think you're in control. You assume your reactions are conscious, but the truth is far more complex. Most of your emotional responses are pre-programmed. Those who grasp this can easily manipulate you. Opportunists don't need to yell, coerce, or impose. They merely press the buttons you've left exposed, and you react every time. Napoleon Hill described this as projection, the mental process by which people assign to others what they refuse to face within themselves. But there's a subtler layer to this phenomenon. As others project, you become the vessel for those images. The more emotionally available you are, the more you serve as a blank screen for these projections. That friend who only calls during a crisis, that partner who depends on you to fix everything, that person who flatters you but only when you're useful. They're not connecting with you, but with the idea of you, with the role you've agreed to play. Why do you accept it? Because you fear disappointing. You fear not being loved. You fear abandonment. The most insidious manipulation isn't loud. It hides in the quiet grip of guilt. It's when you feel indebted, obligated to help, to listen, to understand, even when it's breaking you inside. Here lies the crucial truth. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They only need you to keep reacting the same way. But the moment you stop reacting, the entire game collapses. When you begin saying no, respond with silence, withdraw instead of defending yourself, the illusion shatters. The mask they placed on you slips away, and now they no longer recognize who you are. Worse yet, they are forced to confront themselves. And most people aren't ready for that. Your unavailability becomes threatening because it exposes the emptiness within others. The silence you offer echoes the internal chaos they've long avoided, and so they strike back. With blame, with emotional theatrics, with anger, not because you're wrong, but because you've stopped being a convenient mirror. Napoleon Hill once said, "True strength is not in resisting darkness, but in transforming it through awareness." When you retreat, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other person's shadow begins to rise, and for those who've always used you as an escape, this is intolerable. But what about you? Are you prepared to be misunderstood, criticized, even rejected for choosing to protect your peace? Are you willing to face the silence that follows the rupture? Because it's in that silence that a new kind of power awakens. And that's where we now turn our focus. In the next section, you'll discover why silence can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche and how it transforms your relationship with the world. Modern life is loud. Everyone wants to speak, to argue, to win debates, to assert their views, even at the cost of their own inner calm. But there is a rare power known only to a few and mastered by fewer still, the power of silence. Not silence born from fear or passivity, but strategic, conscious, and lucid silence. When you stop reacting, you begin observing, and through observation, patterns reveal themselves. Emotional loops, games of manipulation, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence sharpens perception, and clarity is dangerous to those who seek to control you. Notice how some people panic when you offer no reply, when you don't explain, when you simply disappear. It's not that they miss you, it's that your silence strips them of narrative power. As long as you speak, you're part of their story. But silence rewrites the script, and that terrifies anyone who depends on your reactions to sustain their control. True silence is not the absence of sound, it's the mastery of your own energetic output. It is the decision not to be dragged into other people's emotional chaos. It is the refusal to engage in battles unworthy of your spirit. Napoleon Hill taught that becoming your fullest self requires a deliberate withdrawal, because only in silence can you hear the voice of your soul without the world's distortion. But be warned, silence has its price. It will alienate those who valued only your performance. It will confuse those who only knew you through their projections. It may even make you appear aloof, cold, or arrogant. But those are merely reactions from those who never wanted your depth, only your usefulness. And here lies the difficult truth. As you mature, you become more selective with your words. You begin to understand that each sentence is an investment of energy, and not everyone is worthy of that investment. Sometimes silence is not retreat, it is sovereignty. It is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence unsettles people because it confronts them with their own minds. with the noise they've long drowned out with distraction. And that discomfort reveals more than any argument ever could. You don't need to justify your absence, but the most profound silence isn't the kind that unsettles others. It's the kind that rebuilds you from within. It's the silence that connects you to something far greater than external validation. In that inner sanctuary, free from the noise of others' expectations, you begin to recover the energy you've lost and reconnect with your essence. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Because it's not enough to simply eliminate the noise around you. You must also relearn how to direct your energy with intention, to decide where it flows, where it stays, and most importantly, where it must never be wasted. This is about learning to be deliberate with your soul. If you're currently reclaiming your energy and redefining your boundaries, my book Beyond the Shadow will serve you well. It unpacks Napoleon Hill's most transformative insights and offers practical tools to guard your energy, establish boundaries, and realign with your true self. The link is in the pinned comment. But remember, understanding these ideas in theory means nothing if in practice you still say yes when your soul screams no. If you still reply to messages that drain you, engage in hollow conversations, or maintain relationships that survive only on habit. Awareness without action becomes another form of self-betrayal. Transformation begins the moment you choose to become intentional, and that choice demands emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being distant, arrogant, or dismissive. It's about not being endlessly accessible. It's about taking ownership of your energy, your time, your peace, and it starts with the little things. Not replying right away, taking a breath before you respond, leaving a heated conversation before you're pulled into chaos, powering off your phone. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your silence. You owe yourself everything, and that truth alone is often unforgivable to those who relied on your emotional compliance, because when you stop explaining, you dismantle the power others held over you. Their ability to keep you locked into an identity of the always understanding one. Napoleon Hill recognized that every path to self-mastery requires solitude, but not a despairing solitude, a sacred one, a time of inner withdrawal, where you learn to hear your own voice again, without interference from the world, where you reconstruct your identity, not through others' perceptions, but through the clarity of your own center. Want a powerful indicator of your growth? Watch who begins to drift away when you become more reserved. Watch who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Watch who accuses you of changing when you finally begin to protect your peace. These aren't signs that you're doing something wrong. They're proof that you're breaking free. Being unavailable feels uncomfortable at first. Guilt will creep in. You'll wonder if you're being too harsh. You'll be told you're being selfish, but that discomfort is part of the unlearning. You've spent your whole life being conditioned to prioritize others. Naturally, change shakes the ground beneath those who benefited from the old you. Conscious unavailability is the cornerstone of sovereignty. Every time you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. Every time you walk away from a toxic space, you affirm that your inner peace holds more value than any shallow attachment. And when you stop justifying yourself, you begin, at last, to earn real respect, even if only from a few. But not everyone will be ready for your new presence, because your emotional distance will expose wounds in others they refuse to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional turmoil to maintain their sense of control, and that's when the rupture happens. And with that rupture comes pain, loneliness, alienation, the aching sense that you're losing something, when in truth, you're just setting yourself free. But what comes next? What follows the silence? What is born in its place? In the final part, we'll talk about rebirth, the kind that only happens when you summon the courage to be misunderstood, to walk alone, and to become whole within yourself. It's time to understand why the solitude of the strong is the only road to real freedom. When you stop being constantly available, something profound takes shape. First, the silence comes. That heavy, uncomfortable silence that echoes inside your mind. You'll question yourself, wonder if you're too harsh, if you've pushed away people who once cared. But then that silence begins to shift. It begins to soothe, to cleanse, to restore. And after the silence comes solitude. But not the solitude of emptiness. It is the solitude of presence, of your presence. The solitude of strength. The solitude of someone who no longer self-abandons just to keep others around. In the space where confusion once reigned, clarity arises. Where anxiety once dominated, peace enters. Where emotional need once lingered, a new strength is born. The strength of becoming whole within yourself. Napoleon Hill taught that the path to becoming your true self, the process of individuation, demands separation from the collective. It asks that you shed the masks, that you walk your own path for a time. And that's exactly what you're doing by becoming unavailable. You're not running from the world, you're returning to yourself. This is where you stop reacting to life and begin to create it, where you stop being molded by circumstances and start shaping your reality from within. The people who resent your absence reveal they never truly wanted you. They wanted the role you played, and now that you no longer perform, they're unsure what to do with you. That's your liberation. Yes, you will lose people, but you'll find yourself. You'll walk away from familiar places, but you'll come home to your essence. You'll be misunderstood, but at last, you'll be respected. Because when you're no longer available for everything, you become rare, priceless, irreplaceable. Make no mistake, this is a rebirth, a new chapter, the beginning of a life where you no longer accept emotional scraps, manipulative games, or empty attachments disguised as love. Now you only welcome what resonates with your peace, your truth, your completeness. And if you've made it this far, it's because a part of you is already ready. A part of you already knows being loved means nothing if it comes at the price of abandoning yourself. True self-love begins the moment you choose you. So tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, even hated, in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of becoming your true self? If this message spoke to you, if it stirred something within you, comment below. I choose my peace. Let's see how many of us are ready to walk this path. And remember, don't miss the next video. It matters more than you know. I'll see you there.